today with what's in the news and what's going on. In Psalm 2, verse 1, it says, "Why do the nations rage and the people plot a vain thing?" So why are the nations raging and why are they plotting something that's vanity? It says, "The kings of the earth set themselves," so these are leaders of nations, "set themselves together with the rulers and take counsel together." So the rulers are the rulers of the seven pillars of any society. I teach on it quite a bit. It's family, religion, business and commerce, media, arts, entertainment, public gatherings. And so there's seven pillars that are part of any society going back, whether it was, somebody bringing the news on horseback and hanging it in the town square, or as we have today, the internet. But every society has that, education, family. And so these seven pillars are the rulers and the kings of the earth. They counsel together. So there's a conspiracy against the Lord, and it's capital Lord, which is Jehovah, which is Jesus, and against his anointed, that's us. And it basically says that there's two things that they're conspiring to do. One is to break their bonds in pieces, which means to break us up, break our unity up, cause strife and division amongst us. And that comes through societal pressures to compromise, societal pressures to fit in, societal pressures to join the world and not stay true to the Bible. And then the second piece is to cast their cords from us, or make them, those that don't join us, to make them outcasts, to make them losers, to make them, not tolerant, not loving, telling us who we can marry and who we can't marry and what we can do and what we can't do. And so in the Bible, it tells us this, and it goes on to say, "He who sits in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord will hold them in derision. He will speak to them in his wrath and distress them in his deep displeasure. And I, God, have set my king," that's Jesus, "on my holy hill." In other words, at the end of the day, God laughs at this because everyone is going to stand before him. So they're plotting something that's vanity. It's the leaders of the earth, the leaders of the seven pillars of our society today, to break up our bands, to get us disunited, societal pressures, again, social pressures, to get people to compromise and to accept the world and the things in the world. And then the second thing is to cast their cords from us, or make us outcast. The second is in Isaiah chapter 5 and verse 20. It says, "Woe to those that call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet or sweet for bitter." In other words, those that take something that's good, and I can say good in the eyes of God and good for the people, and make that evil, and then take something that's evil and make it good, and so what they're doing is they're doing the reverse of God and calling it good, and calling it light and calling it sweet, when in actuality it's directly against God. But it goes on to say, "Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes, prudent in their own sight." In other words, they're all going to stand before God anyway. And it goes on to say, "Woe to the man, mighty man who drinks wine. Woe to the valiant for mixing intoxicating drinks, who justifies the wicked for a bribe, who takes away justice from amongst the righteous men. Therefore a fire shall devour them." And so I want to talk today in our headline of prophecy. There's a playbook. I call it today the devil's playbook for the nations of earth. There's a book that was written by a community organizer in Chicago. His name was Saul Alinsky. And this book is really the playbook for today for what we're seeing around the world. How you look at things and you say, it just doesn't make sense. So he wrote this, but he died in 1972. He was a Chicago community organizer. So Barack Obama was a Chicago organizer after, and before his law school and all of that. But Hillary wrote her thesis on the book, and Obama has quoted him in his memoirs. And so the book is as far as colleges and political science is concerned, is in liberal colleges around the country. But Saul was an atheist. In fact, he dedicated the book and idolized Satan in the beginning of the book, because he was the first to uprise against the status quo and set up a separate kingdom. And so and I'm going to play some videos that express that. But he his thinking stems from Stalin and Lenin and Mao, and taking a democracy or a theocracy and moving it to a socialized, almost communism. And so he wrote this book in 71, a year before he died. It's called Rules for Radical. So there's two parts to it that are important. One is, and we're not going to cover today, are the 13 steps to change the culture and society to socialism. And the first one of the 13 is quoted by one of our speakers in the video, but it's to change the status quo, you have to bring friction, you have to bring heat, you have to bring pressure. And so if you keep the status quo, it's going to stay the same. But if you allow crime to run rampant and you bring division between communities, you bring divisiveness, what happens is that friction, that fire, that I guess abuse of freedom will cause change. It'll bring change, and because it won't change if it stays in the status quo. So, I mean, in these 13 steps, when I read them, I'm not prepared to teach them yet. There's going to be a part 2 to this, maybe in a week or 2 or 3, but another thing he has is make your enemy live up to their standards. Those that believe in the Bible, make them live to those standards, or else tear them down as hypocrites before everyone. Or take the things that you're doing that may be against your enemy, and project those on your enemy, so that the people look at your enemies as doing those things wrong. I mean, you can see where I'm going. So the 13 steps to change the culture and society to socialism, we'll study at another time. Today, I want to look at the 8 steps to take a government and an economic structure from a democracy to socialism. What do you need to do that? What are the steps necessary to do that? And so number 1, there's 8 steps, is to increase debt to unsustainable levels so that you can increase taxes and produce more poverty. And everything he's doing in the 13 steps and in the 8 steps, it's driving bigger government. It's driving dependency and reliance on government. It's even crime in the streets. It's driving the federal government to get involved because the locals can't take care of it. So everything he does, so by driving, and you would think by increasing debt to unsustainable levels where you can't sustain it, so you can, 1, increase taxes on the rich, and 2, produce more poverty. Okay, so the second piece is to increase poverty as high as possible because it's easier to control and people won't fight if the government is providing everything for them to live. So in other words, increase debt to an unsustainable level so that we have to tax the rich, tax companies, tax those that are earning very high levels, but at the same time move the middle class into a dependency on the government. Poverty increases levels as high as you can. Poor people are easier to control. They will not fight back if the government is providing everything for them to live. Number 3 is a part of that. Take control of every aspect of their lives by the government providing necessities like housing and energy and income and food. And so, their idea is to even have nobody own their own homes. I mean, when you start thinking about this, what they want to do is they want to drive people to a place where the government's providing these things for me, so why rebel against the government? And so create class warfare, divide the people into the wealthy and the poor. This causes more disconnect. It'll be easier to take taxes from the wealthy with the support of the masses who have been moved from the middle class to dependency on the government and dependency on them paying the bill. Take over the healthcare system. If you take over the healthcare system, you control the people. Take guns. Remove the ability to defend yourself from the government. That way you can create a police state. Number 7, education and media. Take control of what people are reading, listening, and learning. Take control of what children are learning in school. Control the message. Religion. Remove the belief of God from the government and schools. By removing religion, you remove independency. And so when you look at these, these 8 steps, now remember, these are in a book, so this is a playbook. I call it the devil's playbook because each one of these is against what we are as a nation. Each one of these, driving debt to unsustainable levels so you can increase taxes, and produce more poverty, that's counterintuitive. Why would you do that? So when you start looking at some of the policies and procedures, even the ideology to increase energy prices and increase inflation and make things more difficult by increasing debt, you're increasing interest rates, you're increasing inflation. What that does is it pushes people down. Those that are very wealthy, it doesn't affect as much, but those in the middle class, it starts to push them down. That poverty and that increase in poverty, produces not always poor people, but people that can't afford some of the basic things in life, And so that welfare or that taking of control where the government provides the necessities, like healthcare, like food, like, energy and even income. When you provide income for somebody and they don't have to work for it, what happens? They become dependent on the government, So when we implemented social standards, the Social Security system back when Roosevelt did it, it was there's a small minority that can't care for themselves, so the majority will help take care of them. Well, now we're at a place where 30, 40, 50% of the people are being cared for by the government. We've seen that even during COVID. So what you're doing is you're creating a larger government with a larger bureaucracy, with larger control, where they can control the masses. And it's the exact opposite of what the founding fathers wanted. And so when you look at Saul Alinsky's book and you look at his 8 steps here, along with his 13 other steps, which are, very drastic. I mean, projecting what you're doing to your enemy on your enemy as if they're doing it. I mean, you look at what's going on today. So we're going to get into those, but I also want to go to something that's a little bit even more broader when we look at the control, because we're seeing this in our nation, because we have elected officials. Those elected officials have an ideology. Their ideology may not line up with our ideology, right? I believe in the Constitution. I believe in freedom. I believe in low taxation. I believe in I can control my destiny. But there are political people that believe the opposite. They think that the government can control. So there's a group called the World Economic Forum, and we'll do a blog on this in the future. Established oddly enough in 1971. It was a group brought together to bring attention to the global issues around the world that needed financial help. The group of elites from the world, the wealthiest, most powerful politicians, business leaders, media, academics, and healthcare, they would get together. Today, they get together in Davos, Switzerland. They started influencing trends. At the helm is a guy named Klaus Schwab. He's one of the most influential people in the world. George Soros is a big part of this. Bill Gates is a big part of this. I mean, everyone goes, Elon Musk, everyone goes to this thing. They meet in Geneva, one major annual gathering a year, but there's several breakouts. So the group morphed from a lobby group 30 years ago for helping globalism to actually setting up an agenda for a one world government for globalism. When I say one world government, where governments would cooperate together instead of independent sovereigns. And so they would eliminate the sovereignty of a nation. We see it in our nation by some of the agreements. The Green New Deal, signing the Paris Accord, which is a green energy accord, where we take our own domestic laws, both at the local level, state level, and government level, and subvert to something that's global, right? The Paris Accords. How much carbon emissions can you have? What can you do? What can't you do? Well, here's the problem. Our country is built on us electing leaders that actually drive agenda. So if we don't like an agenda, we don't like an ideology, we vote them out of office. So this is moving us more to globalism. And so they have the Saul Alinsky book as their playbook. They also have something that's very dangerous, which is Noah Yuval Harari, which is the AI technical brain implant, mark on the body, biomarker on the body, part of this whole thing that ties into the Bible. So they're looking for a digital currency, a one world currency. I mean, this is what they believe would make the world work better, right? And so I shouldn't get censored for this. I hope I don't, because all of this is public knowledge. So, again, we're here. There's a playbook to all of this, and when you see notables like Hillary and Obama and others that are part of the establishment, they really believe that this is the direction that our nation should go, and they're implementing these pieces. But at the same time, there's half the nation that doesn't see it that way. They want what the founding fathers wanted and want to live that way. And so let's look at our videos, and then we'll come right back.
These days, it seems that Saul Alinsky has taken over the modern left. This is no longer the party of JFK, not even close. John F. Kennedy said in his inaugural address, "The rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God." In contrast, there is no God, said Saul Alinsky, who died in 1972. Alinsky was a Marxist community organizer par excellence from Chicago. He virtually perfected many of the by any means necessary tactics the left is often using today. Alinsky deeply influenced some key leaders of the left, such as Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, who has taught Saul Alinsky's tactics to a whole new generation of social warriors. Alinsky believed agitation was the key to overhauling the system. He said, first rule of change is controversy. Change means movement, and movement means friction, and friction means heat, and heat means controversy. In 1971, he wrote the book on such change, Rules for Radicals, which he even dedicated to Lucifer. Saul Alinsky believed that truth and morality are relative. He wrote, "The end justifies almost any means." He targeted Christians in order to break down Christian morality in society. He said, quote, "Make opponents live up to their own book of rules. You can kill them with this, for they can no more obey their own rules than the Christian church can live up to Christianity," end quote. With this kind of thinking, virtually no Christian or person of goodwill could run for office because no one is perfect. Yet Calvin Coolidge said, "If good men don't hold office, bad men will." Indeed, what we need is more Christians and people of goodwill holding office, not more Marxists who are trying to tear down this country Saul Alinsky style.
On that same year, he published his final and most influential book, Rules for Radicals. On his dedication page, Alinsky wrote,
"Lest we forget at least an over-the-shoulder acknowledgement of the very first radical, who rebelled against the establishment and did it so effectively that he at least won his own kingdom. Lucifer."
When he's looking at Lucifer and calling him he's the first radical, he's not radical. He's a creation of God. And he's an angel, but a fallen angel. And his work is not successful.
In a review by The Nation, Alinsky was called the country's leading hellraiser. He opens the first chapter of his book with a statement of purpose for his community organizing that directly aligns himself with Karl Marx's diabolical conflict theory.
The life of man upon earth is warfare.
He then connects the purpose of his book with the atheistic utopianism of Fabian socialist George Bernard Shaw.
What follows is for those who want to change the world from what it is to what they believe it should be.
Finally, he connects the book's purpose with The Prince by Italian Renaissance philosopher Niccolò Machiavelli.
The Prince was written by Machiavelli for the haves on how to hold power. Rules for Radicals was written for the have-nots on how to take it away.
Machiavelli tells us, a wise ruler cannot and should not keep his word. When doing so is to his disadvantage. Since men are wicked and will not keep faith with you, you need not keep faith with them. But it is essential to know how to conceal, how crafty one is, to know how to be a clever counterfeit and hypocrite.
The end justifies almost any means. All effective actions require the passport of morality. You do what you can and clothe it in moral garments. Pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. Make the enemy live up to its own rules. Moral rationalization is indispensable at times of action, whether to justify the selection or the use of ends and means.
Well, welcome back. And, as you can see, it's nothing that I didn't, tell you. I want to do the other 13 steps. It's much more complicated for me to put it together because it's a lot of information. These were easy, so when you look at these 8 pieces, in our own nation and our own, current government, we see a lot of this moving. I mean, when you look at some of the things like open borders, well, why are open borders? Why do we look at open borders and say they're wrong? Well, because we're letting everybody in the country, spies, criminals, drug dealers, sex trafficking. But why would somebody want open borders who believes in Saul Alinsky's book, where there are no borders? It's one world government. It's everybody should be able to flow in and out of nations. Why would you let criminals out the same day, or take the rights from victims and allow criminals to do what they're doing and let them back out on the street? You're causing friction, and the friction causes movement, and the movement causes the government to have to get involved. Eventually you'll see the federal government involved in Chicago and Philadelphia and New York. And it comes, if you kept the status quo, nothing would happen in their eyes. So they have to create this. What does inflation do? By not addressing it, bringing a solution to it, what does it do? It takes the first 3 points. It drives up debt. It increases taxes. It increases dependency on the government, right? So as you look at this, now you see it. Thanks for watching today. Just a couple of things before we close. One is share this. They've been censoring us terribly. I mean, I had these headline and prophecies 2 years ago with 1/10 of the follow. I have 80,000 followers now. We used to get 60, 40, 50,000 views. Today, last week's got 2,600. So not even 10%, 5% of what we should be getting because we have so many followers. But people and even censorship can't control sharing. So when you share this to your family and friends and do it purposely, you're helping us grow our ministry and get the message out. Amen. Hopefully you found this useful. Hopefully you learned something for it. Please comment. Please like it and share it. Because that gives us feedback. That also helps our algorithms with Facebook and YouTube and such. The other thing is, please pray about becoming a partner with us for $10 a month or $25 a month or $50 a month. Just hit the website, go to donate, become a partner. Give us $10 a month, 2 cups of coffee a month from your favorite coffee place to help us on our mission. If hundreds or thousands of people do that, you'll help us in our mission, and it won't be a burden to you. It'll be an offering. And then pray for us because we are getting censored. We're even though we're growing. We ended the year with 38,500 followers, and we have close to 80 now. And so we doubled in the first 6 months, even though we're getting maybe 5% of our content viewed anymore. And so that just proves that the content is good and the people want the content. But we grow through you sharing. We grow through you giving $10 or $25 or $50 a month to help us on our journey to teach this word and to get the message out. We have 11 broadcasts a week. If you add in 1 minute, one verse, we have 17 broadcasts a week. And it's all about the word. We believe it's the word, the truth that sets us free, that teaches us, and we learn by it. So that's our mission. Our mission is, one, to get people to heaven, to get rid of the nonsense and fluff and sugar coating that's in the modern church today and what's being taught by teaching the truth. A lot of messages are taught from the eyes of the people to God. We teach from God's expectations to man, because that's what we're going to be judged by. So getting people to heaven, teaching them what's going on in the culture and how to get in and through what's ahead as we approach the return of Jesus Christ. So God bless you guys. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Monday.